So Lee, why do you have a bag stuck to your stomach?
So I unfortunately have a stoma, and that's a consequence of the surgery I had over 7 years ago now. Plant fiber doesn't break down. Unfortunately, a victim of that in the worst form, if you like. This stuff is very inflammatory. And for me, I obviously had gut problems, and I just thought, like everybody else, a well-balanced diet, whole plant foods, a variety of everything. I wasn't anything close to vegan, but I would say I was eating, a plant-based diet. I was 70, 75, sometimes 80% plants, very lean proteins. But I've had to have ileostomy surgery because my colon was absolutely riddled with ulcerative colitis, and that just got worse and worse through eating plant fibers. I was diagnosed back in 2012, and it was really quite mild. And I even managed to go the first 2 years without medication. But when I saw the doctors, after 2 years, it got a little bit worse. They gave me some drugs to lower bowel frequency movements to address my symptoms, make my life a little bit easier. And they also gave me the cliche advice that we hear in these medical circles: eat more fiber, whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and stuff like that. So that's exactly what I did. It didn't work for me. Over the course of the next 3 years, I was just edging closer and closer to an emergency surgery. And that's exactly what happened to me in 2017. I flared up for the last time. I almost knew that it was the last time because it was just so extreme, very intense. I felt like there was no going back. Something had to change. You know what I mean? I was laying on the couch for maybe 10 minutes, and then I would get another signal to go back to the toilet. And I was going 30 times a day over the last few days until I was in hospital. Very, very weak, emaciated. I'd lost a lot of muscle tissue. Everything I was trying to eat was going right through me. I even tried the medications that they gave me, and I was seeing evidence of the meds intact on the way out. And so it was quite scary, quite worrying. Ended up in hospital, obviously very weak and in need of sort of intravenous drip with electrolytes and things like that. They put me on steroids initially just to try and lower inflammation right there and then to get me out of trouble, and they could then sort of have a little bit of an exploratory approach, see what's going on there, because they didn't really know. The last time they saw me, it was mild proctitis, and now all of a sudden I've got severe ulcerative colitis from 0.1 to all the way to 100 on my colon. So there was no saving any of it. They put me on a immune suppressant drug, which was very strong. I think it was a trial drug actually at the time. And they kept me on it for a little bit longer than they said that I should be on it. It was about a 50-50 chance I was going to get into remission, come out of my flare and be on some very severe drugs for life. And most likely, I don't think I would have avoided this surgery in that state. So it didn't work. They came in and said, can't afford to keep you on this drug anymore. It hasn't worked for you. We've got to take your whole colon out. And that happened basically the next morning. And so now I live with an ostomy bag. It's a permanent situation. And I basically empty out of my ileum. So I have all of my digestive tract intact all the way down to where the colon would begin. I have no part of my colon left. And so I now have a very unique perspective on food digestion, the state that food's in, as it would enter someone's colon or my colon when I had it. Unfortunately, again, as a consequence of this surgery, I felt very, very depressed almost immediately I got home. My folks went to work, my brother went to work. I was just on my own with my own thoughts, and I really didn't like my situation, the bag, the way it looked and felt. I'm definitely not the right person. The compatibility with someone like me, I've always kind of appreciated comfort and convenience, and there's nothing comfortable or convenient about this situation. And that just got to me. So I was quite depressed. It went up and down. And before I started Carnivore, I'd never known depression like it. It was very, very debilitating. I didn't feel like I could even move forward sometimes. Froze at the door coming in from work. If no one was here, I could just be myself and just freeze, almost like being paralyzed. I didn't even want to wash, like when you're that depressed, you just don't achieve anything. To leave the house is like climbing Mount Everest. And so I was looking for answers. And it wasn't until I tried to get help for my depression. I saw a doctor and they gave me a number. I'm trying to think what it's called now. I think it's We're With You. It may be called We're With You or something like that. I then went through this unit, and they were going to help perhaps refine how they were going to treat me with therapy, potentially drugs, which obviously I didn't really like the sound of. But at that point, I was desperate. 2 months went by and I'd not heard back from these people when they were going to obviously see me and get me in and try and treat me. During this time, I stumbled across an anecdote from Michaela Peterson where she had gone on a lion diet, so a carnivore diet, and she had ameliorated all these symptoms. And one of those problems that she had was severe depression. And so that blew me away. I was very much inspired. I thought, I've got nothing to lose. At that point, I was on my own again. I didn't get the ball rolling with the doctors for whatever reason. And so I just jumped in the next day with the BBBE challenge. 3 weeks later, my depression lifted. I've not looked back. I set myself originally a 30-day challenge, and I've just not looked back. It's been 19 plus months now. Life's great. Even though the bag is still there, I don't feel the same way about it. I've got a better relationship with the bag, finding some kind of peace and understanding that it's the reason why I'm here. The funny thing about this whole thing is that I've found that through having different diets post-surgery, obviously I went back to a very similar diet to what I was eating pre-surgery, and now I'm on a carnivore diet. I've got two completely different outcomes with food digestion and how that makes me feel physically. It also affected my mental health as well. And that is that all the plants, I was seeing evidence of that stuff in the bag. And that was quite shocking to me. Fruits like mango and pineapple, all the nuts and seeds, whole grains, they all wind up in the bag. But the meat, and I don't know why I've never questioned this, the meat was never intact. It was just this kind of runny liquid. It might have a color to it, browny, greeny, whatever, but it's obviously low inflammation. There's nothing there evident. There's not like a massive piece of meat or all this stuff, no matter what it is that you're eating, eggs, beef, yes, even red meat, it all breaks down 100%. And so now I have a much easier time with the bag, even just with the food relationship. So I don't feel obstructions. I don't feel any kind of discomfort. I don't feel when the bag's even working most of the time, where when I would eat a lot of plants, I would get these signals. It's like, right, here we go, because my abdominals would react and contract and flex and all this kind of stuff. The food would struggle. I've had multiple obstructions with the plants. With meat, it's just a breeze. And so not only am I not depressed anymore, but I just have a better experience with digestion. I'm able to accept my position and this situation with having a bag and it being a permanent scenario for me. And so life is good. And so now I'm obviously just all about advocating for this way of life for multiple reasons, but certainly if you've got depression, IBD, IBS, diverticulitis, any gut-related problems, and trying to address this whole fiber fallacy, because it's definitely one of those classic lies we've been told. And it's kind of this, like Kendi Berry says, it's the echo of the lie. We keep hearing about it. We're going to continue to see studies come out. You type things on Google, there it is. The top search is all this nonsense again, all this lies and leading people down the wrong path. So,
yeah, thanks for explaining that, and I appreciate the amount of detail and the amount of just honesty and sincerity it must take to sort of come out and say that. I mean, your story is quite haunting for me, even me to hear, and I know I've heard it a few times. Being that you're in a position where you could barely, go to open the door. Your partner, your wife Freya, had to go and do these things for you, like all the sort of day-to-day stuff. You must have felt quite dependent, quite weak, quite physically challenged in terms of what you could do day to day. But now it's also nice to see, because it gives people a stark warning. This is what happens when you do the wrong thing. But despite all that you've been through, you're now on the other side of it. So although, you're kind of accepting what you have to do now, you don't, this is probably quite a bizarre question, but do you miss carbs? Do you miss processed foods? Do you miss anything like that?
It's funny. I feel like one of the lucky ones. So in the beginning, sure, I had my cravings. It was almost like a form of victimizing yourself. You think, oh, it's unfair. They seemingly get away with it. They can eat the stuff I used to like, and they don't seem to have the same problems. It's quite easy to put yourself in that position where you're the victim. But right now, I can honestly tell everybody I don't think about carbs. The only time they come to mind is when somebody else is cooking something and I think, oh, it's what I used to eat. And if I see people eat, I always just think it looks really, really strange now, things that I even used to like the smell, and I don't know, just associations with when I look at those things now, it's bizarre to me. And so it's amazing what you get used to. And I think that's the problem on the other side where I was, is mostly inertia. We're conditioned to believe certain things about what is healthy and what isn't, what we should aim to eat, what we should aim to do. I think I was, years ago, I was over exercising in some ways. I was overeating carbohydrates little and often. I was doing all these things, and it's completely contrary to what is optimal for health.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, could you outline what your diet was like prior to this and what it's like now? Just to highlight to people, this is what can happen if you take the piss effectively.
Yeah. So I think typically, like a lot of people, my breakfast was always grains. I actually thought oats were one of the healthier things to eat at the time. And so I always had oats, and sometimes I would do the overnight oats. And, in some ways that makes it a little bit easier on the digestive system. But a lot of the time I would add almonds and goji berries and things like that to it afterwards. So it kind of takes the whole point away from why you're soaking them and all this and cooking them thoroughly. All of a sudden I'm adding like seeds and goji berries that are just kind of the skins and pieces of like, the plants that just aren't going to break down. You think you're chewing this stuff properly, and then you've got these little shards of nuts and seeds and the berries and the skins that are just obviously really inflammatory. I'd usually have that with almond milk as well. So really, really kind of blue pilled my previous self, just had absolutely no idea, just kind of bought all this misinformation and often disinformation. Come lunchtime, I would often have whole grain sandwiches, wraps and things like that. And again, I quite enjoyed at the time things like tuna, lettuce, olives, tomatoes, things that I thought whole foods, intact, this is healthy, it's balanced, this kind of stuff. And so that's what I would have for lunch. Dinner time, again, almost always grains. And so it would either be based around pasta or rice, or maybe, you'd have some garlic bread on the side of something. And so I would have some meat, but if it was always lean. And so if I had, say, chili con carne, you've got your rice, you've got your beef, but you've got hardly any fats there and lots of tomatoes and things like garlic and whatever else you want to throw in there. Pasta dish, I did love my pasta, but again, I'm always adding like tender stem broccoli and, do you know what I mean? All the inflammatory foods that, again, not knowing at the time, were just causing me so many problems with gas, with inflaming my gut, where the portion of the plant that doesn't break down is just perhaps irritating, where I've got ulcers in my colon. Way back when I didn't even have my diagnosis, I was still consuming a lot of this stuff because my nan would cook for me when I was younger. My mum and my dad cooked here and there, and they're not trying to poison their child. They don't think that this is a problem. They're trying to just keep you happy here and there. You have a little treat here and there, but for the most part, it was whole foods, and it was like a hearty looking meal, shepherd's pie and stuff like that. All sorts of pies, actually. Typical English grub, roast dinner on a Sunday, which is probably one of the worst things, especially since having my back. I remember going back to eating a Sunday roast. I even before finding the carnivore diet, chose to not eat very, very many vegetables at all. I was like, right, I don't want the broccoli this time. I'd maybe just the gravy, the spuds, and the Yorkshire pudding. So I wouldn't have so much carrot and so much broccoli and stuff, because it was causing me so many problems. But this was something I was doing religiously, like a lot of us do on a Sunday. We go around your mum's, or they come over here and we do a roast. And so it was just a lot of vegetables. And for me, vegetables were a real problem, Potatoes less so. The rice and the pasta, believe it or not, less so. But when I had my diagnosis, I started to have like brown rice and whole grain bread and brown pasta, all this stuff, and that's even worse for someone with gut issues. That's actually going to be even worse than the refined stuff. So that's what I ate, whole foods, very balanced, mostly plant-based.
Interesting. Yeah, and how does that differ to what you have now? So, I mean, I appreciate a lot of people that watch this probably don't weigh or track their food, but roughly, do you eat a pack of meat a day? Like, what sort of diet do you have?
What now, you mean?
Yeah.
So I've obviously focused around red meat, and so I don't have any plants whatsoever. I don't even have refined plant, bread, pasta, rice and stuff like this. Even things like bananas and potato, which I would say aren't so inflammatory. They're more softer and pliable. I just don't even go there. I stay away from sugar. I stay away from fiber, but I also stay away from all the derivatives. For me personally, I don't have teas or coffees. I've kind of gone, I know people think it's extreme, but I've just gone completely the other way now. And it's only served me well. And so if it's not broken, don't fix it. If anything, I've fixed all my problems doing what I'm doing now. And so red meat is king. That's what I focus on. If I haven't got enough red meat, then I just add eggs. I've always got some eggs in the pantry, and use animal fats to cook with. I stay away from any vegetable oils, seed oils, even from the pulp like coconut oil and olive oil. So I cook in animal fats, usually beef tallow, beef dripping, occasionally butter. If I cook my eggs, I cook them in butter. And that's it really. I'm mostly eating once a day. And again, that's quite nice. I never really thought about it, years ago, but for someone with gut issues, you don't want to be pouring food in 3, 4, 5, 6. I've eaten 7 meals in a day before. If you think, say, breakfast, a snack, lunch, snack, dinner, a snack, that's 6 meals there. And that was very, very typical for me. Even if it was just a handful of nuts in between meals. I tried bodybuilding years and years ago, and that's what I was doing. I was snacking on almonds in between meals. And I always had, chicken, broccoli, and rice, but there would always be these different vegetables, seeds, nuts, grains peppered in on the meals. And it's like, my body never had a break, where now it's like I'm eating this really nutrient dense but non-inflammatory food, which is broken down 100%. And I'm doing it once a day. And so my gut, I'm sure, is in good condition now, considering,
Yeah, you made some interesting anecdotes there. So you mentioned about white rice being not as bad at that point in time. Obviously, you don't eat it now, but that reminds me of the bodybuilder Stan Efferding. Now he promotes a red meat and white rice style diet. That's his thing. So obviously it's not carnivore, but it's a step in the right direction, and it kind of matches your anecdotes. It's interesting. But before we kind of touch on like the bodybuilding physique kind of side of it, I wanted to ask what your opinion was. So this is just your opinion. You're welcome to say whatever you want. But did you find it to be more intensive on your digestive system to have high fiber foods, or just the mass of food? So what would you say was the biggest indicator in terms of like you going down, you thinking, oh, my stomach's not feeling good? What was worse for digestion, just to pick one thing?
Yeah, I would say definitely fiber. If I had to go back and say, well, look, you can take the fiber out, or you can take maybe the mass or the carbohydrates out, I would definitely just rid the fiber, because at least it's easier on the gut. Obviously, there's problems with blood glucose being elevated here and there with white rice and pasta. I think obviously if you're bodybuilding, that's probably not going to be so a disadvantage for you as an individual. But I think if I was just to go back, I would certainly take the fiber out. That's the stuff that caused me the most problems: obstructions, gas, discomfort, and I think flares. I think that's why a lot of people with UC and Crohn's, they start juicing their cabbages and things like this for the glutamine, and that's supposed to heal their gut and stuff like that. I was even falling for some of that stuff, desperate in the last moments, juicing my cabbages and taking the medication with it, and it wasn't doing me any favors. But yeah, fiber's definitely my old nemesis.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I tried to chase up fiber in the past myself. I was like, if 30 grams isn't enough, apparently, the guidelines changed, or you need 42 grams or whatever it was. Well, okay, increased it. My body did not like that. So I'm just interested to hear your experience. But my next question kind of relates to supplements. Now, most people I speak to on the carnivore diet do actually take supplements. So whether that be a vitamin, a mineral tablet, magnesium, a night, a spray, anything you add to your diet to sort of nourish yourself in a sense. Now, did you use any of these things in the past, whether it be digestive enzymes or anything like that? And did you find any of them helpful, or was it just you sort of kicking a can along the street sort of thing?
So, I mean, years ago, I have taken some supplements here and there, but mostly it was just like a multivitamin. I just thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. A lot of people have that mentality, just add in a multivitamin. If you're short on anything, you may be able to get that up and the levels up. But I've never been huge on supplements. When I was trying to bodybuild and I didn't have a lot of success, I think I wasn't sleeping optimally at the time. I would take different things, the obvious whey protein, but creatine and some, I can't remember some of the compounds I was taking before. Some of them more scientifically shown to have some advantage, even if it was 1-2%. If it had an advantage, I was giving it a good go, But sure. I've never been a guy that takes a lot of supplements. And right now, I'm taking none. I don't take any supplements myself. So, I think I used to have that mentality, if I can see that all this spectrum of colours on my plate, then I'm getting all the nutrients I need. That's kind of how I used to think. And so I was often aiming for colours. It's just this old, and I'm sure there's some truth to that, but I think it serves the plant. You've got obviously the beta carotenoids and things that's in like more orange and red type of foods, but that's not going to serve us. That serves the plant. It's not what we want.
That's interesting. So I was at the public health collaboration in Sheffield in the UK last year. I think it was May. And they pitted up Dr. Chafee to debate plants for veganism versus carnivore against a doctor. I can't remember his name. He's a black gentleman. Anyway, his whole premise is eat the rainbow. It's nourishing. And he had no evidence to substantiate his claims. All he said that was correct was these things contain antioxidants and polyphenols. But that was as limited as his information was. He didn't say about the other side of it. So, like you've mentioned, like the fiber, maybe the anti-nutrients, things like that. Now, I wanted to ask a bit about how you kind of transitioned to a carnivore diet. I mean, obviously you came across Michaela Peterson, like myself, like yourself. Our stories are quite similar in terms of like breaking barriers and mental health, depression, things like that. Now, did you go cold turkey? Was it like, I can't do that, I need to do something, Monday morning, get up, I'm going to eat beef for a year and a half or whatever,
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not exactly the most patient person. When I get an idea, I want to do it right there and then. And I think another thing is I was so desperate. I was so fed up of feeling the way I felt. I didn't really want to go about transitioning slowly. And I hadn't really heard, I wasn't exposed to enough information to realize the importance of that potentially for some people. I mean, I certainly don't advocate for people just going cold turkey, but I think a lot of people like me that don't moderate, they get this idea and then it's like, right, tomorrow, this is what I'm doing. That's kind of what I did. And so I wouldn't advocate for that. I think I did get away with it, maybe because I don't have a colon. And a lot of people that have that quick biome change where I probably don't have at least the extent of a biome that the average person does. And so maybe that's how I got away with it. But for the first 2 weeks, it was a little bit rough because I've kind of gone from glucose metabolism, 3, 4, 5 meals of just carb heavy meals to you're not eating any carbs anymore. You're eating beef, butter, bacon and eggs and not being able to perhaps get in enough fats and understanding really, the physiology of it all, because the body's got to make a very extreme shift and it's going to try and, okay, this isn't coming in. That's strange. We're getting a lot of this bile production, things that are slow to try and turn around to get to an optimal stage. And that just took me a long time, but for me, 3 weeks went by and everything was great. Everything was vastly improved. I still had some cravings. And I've been able to, over time, get more and more fat in, and that's only made me feel even better. So, yeah, it was a quick transition, but I just don't advocate for that, really, for other people.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you're a young chap as well. It's not the worst thing. I mean, I wanted to ask as well about your not so much bodybuilding, but body composition. So I understand you did like 6-7 meals a day at one point, lots of carbs, rice, meat, pasta, lean stuff. Where did that land you in terms of your body? And what have you done now? Like, was there a dramatic difference in the way you look at yourself, perceive yourself in the mirror, your aesthetics, your body composition in terms of Western diet to post-surgery carnivore diet?
Sure. So it's funny. I've always thought I've had a bit of a unique body. Like I look like I've got a good genetic foundation in some ways. Without working out, I look like I would be able to go places, but I've always really struggled to put on actual muscle. Now, I was consuming a decent amount of food. I obviously went by the whole calorie strategy, calculating my total daily energy expenditure and figuring out all my calories and this kind of stuff. What I found is when I start to gain weight, I gain newbie gains. I get those newbie gains for maybe the first 12 weeks and then I plateau. And I also have the same success with strength and then I plateau. I even had a buddy come round my house and we did the same things, same time, but I never missed leg day. He would be like, oh, I don't want to come and do legs. I feel like this, whatever. I went on holiday. I would still get up at 6 a.m. I'd go down and get a good workout, even if it was leg day, And so I was very, very determined and tenacious with it. But for me, I only gained fat. I never really gained muscle. And so for all this extra calories, that I was consuming, I was just packing on fat. And all I started to do was just see less and less muscle, even though I was getting a little bit bigger. I had a lot of kind of what looked like distended gut a little bit, and it's funny with me, I kind of distributed fat everywhere. So I had a bit of puffy face, thick, like double chin and shoulders, losing all definition of my arms. It was just kind of like this big parallel line, 2 lines that went down to my arms. I gained a lot of weight on my bum and my legs, just everywhere. I was just able to just pack fat on. But that was it. When I went carnivore, so obviously, so when I had the surgery, I naturally lost a lot of muscle tissue. I wasn't moving around and I wasn't able to hold on to any food. It was just kind of going through me. And I think maybe my body was using parts of me to do whatever it needed to do. I was quite thin and I rapidly lost weight. I'd never seen my arms, my bicep look so small. It was really strange. Came out of hospital, and as I started to just eat normal food again, none the wiser, I just started to return back to where I was, but with a bag. So I looked quite similar. When I went carnivore, what I noticed is that I actually saw my bicep vein for the first time in my entire life. I didn't think it's almost like I didn't have one. I always envied that, you look at other people and you're like, oh man, I don't have that. I just always had too much fat. And even if I tried to get my calories right, I've gone through phases of eating mostly tuna like you used to do, and lots of fish and stuff, and limiting carbs. And when I put my mind to something, it doesn't matter how I feel. I'm just like, I'm really stubborn and I can stay on track. Even then, I never saw my bicep vein. And I did this for like maybe 8 weeks, I even bought some silly, weight loss type plant extract stuff that's supposed to do all these miracle things. And I never saw much definition. Well, I went carnivore and all of a sudden it's like I got super vascular. I've even seen in the beginning stages veins in my abs and veins in my back. And now I'm not saying that's a sign of health. I think if anything, I wasn't adapted. I lost a little bit too much fat. And it was kind of like, right, I need to start eating more. Exactly. I need to eat more food. And that took some time. But the funny thing is that now I feel like I'm at a very healthy weight for myself. At 5'6", I weigh 140 pounds. And I've still just got a little bit of a bicep vein. If I tense my abs, I've got 6-pack definition around the bag. It's not like I go around showing that off or anything. I just feel healthy, and I don't lift weights or anything like that. I do a bit of jump rope. I've obviously got a reasonably physical job during the day, but that's it. It just maintains itself, and I've not lost. I seem to be able to hold on to my natural muscle tissue, what I'm supposed to have, just to carry out normal tasks during the day, and my body fat just stays even keel, naturally, no effort whatsoever. So, yeah, it's got to be something said to that as well.
For sure, yeah. I mean, there's always a very strong genetic factor in these sort of things, and like yourself, I'm tenacious, like just get on with it and just do it. I like to abstain from things, just get the job done. It sounds like you tried all that, but that's you're doing exactly what your body's defined and meant to be doing. Your body's optimal for whatever purposes are in terms of like your job, day-to-day stuff. If you're an athlete, maybe your body would look a bit different, but there's no point of that. You don't have that goal. And I keep saying to people, and they kind of misunderstand my videos, but my point isn't to get people on my channel, and build huge muscular bodies, but I can tell people how they're going to do it in the safest possible way. But we all have our genetic limitations, our own weaknesses, strengths. And it sounds like you're just optimizing what you would have regardless. So I commend you on that. And be able to accept these sort of things is really important.
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah, so my last question for today is just about your YouTube channel. What inspired you to make your videos? And I appreciate how much editing goes into them. And I know you get loads of comments saying, you do a great job, which is absolutely true. But I think there's more behind the videos that you make. I think you've got a much better voice and your anecdote is absolutely worth something. Can we expect more videos from Kent Carnivore that are of you, like on the screen?
Yeah, it's funny. I've actually got quite a diverse channel when you compare to other carnivores and even just sort of diet YouTubers, if you like. I think I've obviously got my anecdote, which I started with, and I remember putting out a video about why I went carnivore that seemed to just hit a little bit. I got some subscribers came in, and that gives you a little bit of encouragement that it's worth making these videos, because you see some nice comments and people are kind of grateful for your input and the angle that you're coming at. I think we're all obviously unique. We've been through our own fair share of struggles, and I've obviously got this unique situation that pertains mostly to IBD, I guess. And so I started with that, and I gained some subscribers on that area of my channel. But then I started to realize, I've always been creative. I play piano and paint and do all sorts of stuff, but I really have enjoyed editing things in the past. And it's something, I'm not a very technical guy, but I can edit, and it's just where I've had practice on some free software. And so I didn't know what I could do in the beginning, in terms of fair use and perhaps copyright infringement. But I knew I would enjoy piecing together almost like mini documentaries and videos that save people time, that are informative, and that you don't need to take it from a cleaner like me. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but perhaps if I can take some reliable sources where I've gleaned a lot of information from and piece together and make it really just concise and clear and easy to understand, that's going to have perhaps impact. That will be the best way for me to help a broad spectrum of people. And so I started doing that as well. And then I would gain subscribers for that reason. And I think maybe still some people don't even know who I am. They've subscribed for one reason or the other, and they haven't put the two and two together. But that's really what I've been doing, is that's kind of one of my skills, I guess, my creative ability. That's what I enjoy doing. I think when you enjoy something, you're passionate about it, you do a better job naturally. And so I'm quite happy to spend time behind my laptop, a bit of research, pulling clips and restructuring and compiling these videos together. And that seems to have helped a lot of people. What I've noticed as well, those kinds of videos get a lot of shares, and so many people in the comments are often like, oh, this is great. I was talking about this with my brother and he wasn't convinced. This will be great to share, And so I found that a lot of the content I was making was really shareable for naysayers, non-believers, family members that are concerned about someone that watches my channel. They're doing this kind of diet, but they're worried. And so then it's kind of like perhaps an 8-minute, 9-minute, 10-minute video all in one shot. There you go. That hopefully should be helpful. And so that's what's happening there. And then I've obviously gone into the opposition side with making some more entertaining type of videos as well, because I don't take myself too seriously. I don't take life too seriously all the time. I like to think I've got a good sense of humor, and so I'll make some more entertaining content as well. And I think I'm just going to try and keep ticking that all over, a little bit more of me, updates, perhaps don't forget, why I started the channel, talk about depression, talk about IBD. Some people really value the unique perspective that I have with the bag, and so they kind of enjoy those videos. And so it's just prioritizing, I try and cycle and go round and round and tick all the boxes, because I've got just a diverse subscriber account that I think are hoping for different videos depending on, but there's probably a few that enjoy all of them perhaps, but there's probably a fair few that wish I didn't make some videos and would make more of the other videos. And so I try and get a balance there, and that's my intentions really. It's just to help and get some accurate information out there for people to watch and share, stuff like that.
Yeah, I absolutely appreciate that. And it's hard to get your audience right in terms of what you're trying to do. You're trying to cover all aspects. You're doing the best you can. I mean, if I typed in Kent carnivore fiber, something would come up. Kent carnivore vegan diet, Kent carnivore cholesterol, something would come up. So I think you've done a smashing job there. Now, this is just my last little question, and that is, what is your favorite video that you've made?
Oh, what's my favorite video that I've made? Do you know, it's so, this maybe comes from being a perfectionist. Like I've painted portraits. I've got paintings on the wall I wish I could take down and do again, but I've already glossed them and finished them. It's like, I can't paint over the top of that stuff. I've had videos. I think there was a video, Balanced Diets Are a Lie, Here's Why. I thought that was quite a good video. It was a little bit longer than the average one. But now I've looked back and it's like, but now I don't know, because maybe the quality isn't there. I've sort of learned how to tweak different things in my editing now that I didn't do back then. So that's kind of that bothers me about that video, But that's really tricky. I quite liked one that I made, Sugar versus Fat. I think it's called The Resurrection of the Carnivore Diet or something like that. But it's just got a thumbnail, Sugar versus Fat. And that classic story, really, I think Nina Teicholz, she made that quite public with the villainization of saturated fats, the history of Ansel Keys' 7 World Country study, the opposition being John Yudkin, which had it more right than he did, obviously talking about how bad sugar was, and the propaganda there, this kind of conspiracy fact, if you like, because it sounds like a conspiracy, and you still get people in the comments think, nah, this is a conspiracy, but you can read the papers yourself. These Harvard professors were paid, they were bribed. But I remember that was one of the first projects I spent a real long time putting together. It was a real mess when I had all these clips and things in the project, and that was quite satisfying to tidy up and get together. So I was quite happy with that one. It's tricky. It's really tricky, because I've even made just restructured videos, and you add some different clips for, say, for example, Jordan Peterson's anecdotes and Michaela and all of this kind of stuff. So I think I would probably go for the sugar versus fat one, perhaps. Maybe that one.
Yeah. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll link that one below for everyone listening to this so they can easily access it. I'll also link in Lee's channel, which is at Kent Carnivore below in the channel section. I just wanted to thank you for your time. I appreciate your experience, your anecdote. Hopefully we can see more of you on camera. Hopefully.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely make an effort to do that.
Build muscle and lose fat on the carnivore diet.